We begin today from the Mishnah towards the bottom of Chafei Amud Beis. This Mishnah continues different details here regarding a chumrah that there was by Trumeh more than Kodesh. The Mishnah doesn't spell it out befedish this way, but as we'll see in the Gemara, that this is something that they were more lenient regarding the kalim that are being used for the kachim of the Beis HaMikdash. Zok the Mishnah. Min ha-Midiim ulufnim. From the city of Midiim, going inside towards Yerushalayim. So Rashi here brings from the Gemara in Psachim that the city of Midiim was 15 mil away from Yerushalayim. So we're talking over here about from that area inside Yerushalayim. So the Mishnah says, Nemanin al kli cheres, the amaratzim that are making the pottery, the earthenware kalim, they will be trusted to buy from them this pottery, even though they're amaratzim and they have a status of tumah. But nevertheless, as Rashi here says, because in Yerushalayim they needed these kalim to be used to contain within them the things that they needed there in Yerushalayim. We'll see in the Gemara this was used for the karbanis, for the kachim, to keep inside of it the oil or the wine, for the nesachim and for the karban mincha, and they needed a lot of these kalim. And another thing, which the Gemara will later explain, and Rashi brings it here, in Yerushalayim itself, they did not allow to have any of these potteries and these ovens to be used in order to make these kalim there. What's the reason? Because it creates a lot of smoke, and they didn't want the walls of the city and the walls over there to become black. Or there's actually another interesting pshat that I saw, that the reason is because there was the smoke of the ketairis in Yerushalayim in the Beis HaMikdash. And they didn't want should be any other smoke over there in the vicinity that should mix in with that smoke of the ketairis. So therefore, in Yerushalayim itself, there was a shortage, and they couldn't make these kalim themselves. So if they're going to make a gzeira that you can't buy from any of the amaratzim, these kalim, so then they're going to have a shortage. So therefore, Chazal suspended their gzeira regarding the status of amaratzim that are tamei from the city of Midiim, that's already close to the parameters of Yerushalayim, that from there, inward, you can buy from these amaratzim, these kalim. Otherwise, Rashi says, it would be a gzeira shein atzibi yochel lamed ba. They wouldn't have any kalim to use. So the Mishnah, min ha-Midiim v'lachutz, but further from Midiim outward, ein nemanim. From there outward, they're not believed anymore. This suspension of this gzeira regarding the amaratzim is only from Midiim inside, not further out. So Keitzad, now how is this halacha actually apply? And here the Mishnah will give certain limitations of exactly when it is that you could buy these kalim, these pots, from these earthenware pottery from these amaratzim. So it's Hakadar, this potter himself, Shuhu Meicher HaKedeiros, he's selling his pots that he made. Nichnas lefnim Midiim, so he, from the city of Midiim, he enters further in, closer to Yerushalayim. And now the Mishnah says, Hu Hakadar, it's only this potter himself that made his pots, he's coming to sell. And Vehein HaKedeiros, and only his own pots that he made, he has with him. Nobody else, no other potter could go and send with him pots that he should sell, even though he didn't make them. And Vehein HaLoichin, and the people that are coming to buy from this potter have to be the people that they saw him coming with. They know that it's his pots that he's bringing and he has nothing else. Then Neman. Then they're believed to buy. That's the only time when the Chachamim allowed and suspended their gzeira to buy from him. So again, it has to be dafke the person himself that's selling it, and he's selling only his pots that he made, and he's selling it to a chaver that saw him coming in with his own pots into the city of Yerushalayim, or that actually from Midiim into Yerushalayim. Yotza, and another thing, but if you went out from Midiim outside, further out, then ein eman. Then from there further out, they did not suspend the gzeira, and you can't buy from these amaratzim, the kalim that they made. Sagt the Gemara, Tani we learned in Abraisa, Midiim, the city of Midiim itself. Pa'amim kilufnim. Sometimes it's treated like inside, like it's close enough to Yerushalayim that there in the city itself they suspended the gzeira and you could buy from the amaratzim. And pa'amim kaluchutz. Sometimes the city of Midiim is considered to be that it's outside of the parameters that are close to Yerushalayim, and you can't buy from the amaratzim these pots. So the Gemara explains it depends where you're meeting and in what kind of scenario you're meeting this ama'aretz that has these kalim, these pots that he wants to sell to you. So Keitzad Kadar Yaitze, if what's going on over here is this Kadar, this potter that's made these kalim, so he's going out. He's on his way out. He was coming from Yerushalayim and he's going towards Midiim, and he's going on his way out to the city of Midiim. And v'chaver nichnas. And then there's a chaver. There's a person that wants to buy the kelim from him, and he's coming from the city Medium, and he's on his way in. He wants to go into Yerushalayim. So then, then the city of Medium, where they met in the city of Medium. The potter is on his way out from Yerushalayim to Medium, and this chaver was in the city Medium on his way in, and he meets him there. We treat the city of Medium like the inside of Yerushalayim, and he's allowed to buy from him. And the reason is because you met him right here, and he's going one direction, and you're going in the opposite direction. You're on the way in, and he's on the way out. If you're not going to be allowed to buy from him over here, you won't have another opportunity to buy from him. So therefore, in this case, the city Medium, they included it into the parameters of Yerushalayim that you can buy from him. However, Shneim Nichnosim, if you encounter this potter with the kelim, and both of you, the chaver that wants to buy from him and the potter, the Amoritz himself, they're both heading into Yerushalayim. Oy Shneim Yaitzim, or they're both heading outward. They're both heading out from Yerushalayim into the city of Medium. Then the city of Median is treated like the outside of the parameters of Yerushalayim, and you can't buy from him. So the explanation of this is, as Rashi explains there, if they're both heading inward, so then Chachamim weren't makel so much. Chachamim said, you know what, he's anyways heading inward, so wait until he gets further in from the city of Median, and there you'll buy from him. And on the other hand, if they're both heading outward, so then Rashi says, you already encountered him before. You met him on the way, coming from Yerushalayim, going outward before you came to the city of Medium. So Chachamim as well said, don't wait until you arrive to the city of Medium itself, which is so far from Yerushalayim. Buy from him earlier, closer to Yerushalayim. There's no reason in such a case to suspend the Gzeira further out in the city of Medium. Amar Abaye explains and says, Afanan namitanina. This distinction that the Braisa makes, that it depends on the situation regarding how we define the city of Medium itself, we could see this from what it says in the Mishnah. Because what did it say in the second part of the Mishnah? Hakadosh hamacharas hagdeidos v'nichnas lefnim in amidin. So the language of the Mishnah uses is that the kada that's selling his pots, and he enters inside from the city Medium. That's the language here. So what does that mean? Taimeh de lefnim in amidin. So from this lashon in the Mishnah, it seems clear that only inside of the city Medium do I say that it's close enough to Yerushalayim that the Gzeira is suspended. Medium gufa, but the city of Medium itself, loy mehemen. He will not be trusted to buy the kelim from him. What does it say right afterwards in the Mishnah? Yotza, if he left from the city of Median, meaning he went further out from the city of Median, then in an emon, then the potter is not believed to buy from him. So Medium gufa, so I see that the city of Medium itself, nemon. He is believed over there. We do trust him to buy from him the kelim. So in the Mishnah itself, in the language of the Mishnah, there's a contradiction regarding the city of Medium itself. So this proves the point that it said in the Braisa, if the potter was on his way out and the chaver is on his way in, so then we treat the city of Median itself like the parameters of Yerushalayim, and the Gzeira is suspended. And but if they're both heading out, or they're both heading inward, so then we don't treat the city of Median like the parameters of Yerushalayim, like we said before. Shma Mino. This proves this point that it said in the Braisa. Now the Gemara explains that this suspension of the Gzeira to buy the kelim from the potter, the pots from these potters, the amaratzim, has another limitation to it, and it's all only for the purpose of Kodesh. So Tana and Abraisa we learned Namonim b'klicheres hadakin. What are they trusted for? They're trusted for these pottery that's like these earthenware that are very thin. They're not these heavy big jugs or big barrels. Small klicheres, small earthenware pottery. That's what they're believed for. And l'kodesh. And this whole suspension of the Gzeira is only for the purpose to use these pots to contain whether wine or whether oil and things like that that's going to be used for the nesachim and in the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so Rashi explains, we'll see later, Rashi explains that the klicheres hadakin, those were the ones that they really needed, that everybody needed in order to pour their wine or the oil in them. The bigger barrels, bigger jugs, they didn't need it for this purpose. There was no reason to suspend the Gzeira for this. We'll see soon in Rashi later in the Gemara. Sagt the Gemara weiter, another machlekes here about this. Reish Lakish said regarding this klicheres hadakin, they suspended the Gzeira only for small klicheres. What's defined as small klicheres? They're small enough that you could hold it in one hand. But if it's so large that you have to hold it with two hands, that's not called small klicheres. Rabbi Yochanan said, even if it's klicheres that it's large enough that you have to hold it with two hands, It's still not these big, huge barrels. It's still small enough, and for that they suspended the gzeira. Only if it's mamish, these very big barrels, that's not something that they needed at all, so there was no reason to suspend the gzeira. Another thing they argued about, Reish Lakish said, Leishano elorei konen. This whole thing that they suspended the gzeira, that you could buy these pottery from the amaratzim that are kadarim, the potters, that's only if they're empty. Avol malayin, if they're selling it to you and it's full of whatever liquid is inside of it, then light. So then the liquid that's inside of it became tamei. In such a case, it did not suspend the gzeira. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Afila malayin, even if it is full with liquid, and vafila apikursusai l'saychai, even if the handkerchief of this amaretz, which is tamei in its own right, and it's not even part of the pat b'chlal, it's not part of this jug b'chlal, fell inside, even then, Chachamim suspended the gzeira for the point that they need the pots itself for the purpose to use it, for the Kodesh and the Beis HaMikdash, they suspended their gzeira. And then Rava said, but Rabbi Yochanan would agree that b'mashkin atzman shem tmeim. When Rabbi Yochanan said that they suspended the gzeira, even though it's full with mashke inside, or even if this amaretz's handkerchief fell inside, that doesn't mean that he's saying that they totally suspended the gzeira and the mashke will become tar. The mashke itself will be tameh. Now you might wonder and say, wait, this is a strange thing. The keli itself will be tar, but the mashke inside of it will be tameh. So the Gemara says, Val titma. Don't wonder about this. And the Gemara will bring another example which we had before. So now the point here is we're talking about tumis and gzeiris midrabanan. If you talk about a tumim midiraisa, there's no such a thing. If it's a tumim and atayre, then the mashkin is tameh, it's metama the keli. But this is all gzeirim midrabanan, so Chachamim made that distinction that the keli they suspended the gzeira and you could buy it from them, and the mashkin will be tameh. Where else do you find by tumim midrabanan such a thing? Shaharei login mali mashkin. When you have a jug that's full of wine, let's say. And this is in the case that we had before regarding a mace that was on the bottom floor, and then you have the top floor, and there's a hole between the two floors, and he went and put a pottery, a earthenware keli in between to separate between them. Right, so the Gemara before said that according to Beis Shammai, and Beis Hillel agrees to this, that we make it, and this is regarding the tumah of an amaretz, regarding the kelim and the tumah of an amaretz. So over there, it made a distinction regarding this amaretz that we say that if he had over there login mali mashkin, a jug that was full of liquid, so login tmei and tumah shiva, the kelim themselves will be tamei and full tumah that you have to wait 7 days and all the halachas that apply. But a mashkin tayrin, the mashkin itself will be tied. So the same thing over here, Rabbi Yochanan holds that this suspension of the gzeira for the amaratzim, that they are allowed to buy the kelim for them for the purpose of kodesh, because they needed it, that was only suspended for the kelim itself, but the mashke inside will be tamei. And this is again a halacha b'negeya to the kula that Chachamim will make b'negeya to kodesh, but not b'negeya to truma. That's the emphasis that there's a machlokes rishonim about what this Mishnah. First let's see the words of the Mishnah here. Hagabayin shenichnasu l'toich habayis. When you have gabayin, these are tax collectors. They were yidden. They were tax collectors, and if you didn't have tax to pay, so then they entered into your house to see if they can take any collateral for the tax. So they come into your house, and v'chein aganovim, and also thieves that were in your house, and they stole things from you. Shechziru es hakelim, and they returned the kelim. These tax collectors, they touched kelim, they took different things, but now they returned it to you. And the ganav came and he returned the kelim to you. Nemanim loima, we trust them to say loina ganu, that we did not touch it inside to make it tameh. Right? They took over here pottery, and they're trusted to say that we did not touch it inside. So Rashi here says that this Mishnah is talking about Kodesh. It's a continuation of the previous Mishnah. Just like in the previous Mishnah, the suspension of the Gzeira regarding the pottery was regarding Kodesh and not regarding Truma, like the Gemara just said. This Mishnah as well, that's saying that even when these tax collectors of Ganovim took these Kalim and their Amaratzim, and it should be Tameh, they suspended that Gzeira regarding Kodesh, but not regarding Truma. And so apparently, according to Rashi's Pshat, this Mishnah is also talking about the same kinds of kalim, these thin kli cheres that they needed to store the wine or the oil for the nesachim in the Beis HaMikdash. It's Rashi's Pshat. But there are other Rishonim that say that this Mishnah is not a continuation of the previous Mishnah, and it's not only b'negei to Kodesh, and it's not only b'negei to specific kinds of kalim that are needed for Kodesh, but it's talking about any kalim, and it's talking sai b'negei to Kodesh and sai b'negei to Truma as well. Ubi Yerushalayim, then the Mishnah says, in the city of Yerushalayim, Nemanin ala Kodesh. They are believed regarding Kodesh. What exactly this is part of the Mishnah means, that they're believed in Yerushalayim on Kodesh. They're believed for what on Kodesh? The Gemara will soon explain. Ubishas haregel, during the time of the Yom Tiv, afal truma. We trust Amaratzim even for truma as well, that the truma that they have and the kelim of the truma, it's all we accept it that it's all tahir. And the Gemara will explain why during a regel we believe Amaratzim. So the Gemara Veramini, I'll ask you a contradiction of what it says in the Braisa. Braisa, or actually this is Braisa, or this is a Mishnah Masechta Taris actually. So there the Mishnah says, Hagaboyin shenichnesu l'toich habayis. You have these tax collectors that enter into a house. Habayis kulei tami. The whole house becomes tami. All the kalim they touched, there were all kinds of places in the house to see what they would take as a collateral for the tax. It's all tami. And our Mishnah said it's tar. Answers the Gemara, loy kashi. It's not a contradiction. If this Yiddish tax collector comes, but he has a guy that's accompanying him, and so then you're afraid that if you're not going to touch everything and take things, and if you're not going to properly go inspect the house to take the kalim, to do your job properly for the tax collection, so then you're afraid that the guy might harm you. So over here there's more of a concern that the Yid was matama things. Our Mishnah is talking about a Yiddish tax collector that comes into the house, they're Amaratzim, but there's no Goyish tax collector with him, and therefore the Yid is not so concerned that he's going to that he's going to touch things and make everything tummy. It's nan, and the Gemara brings that eye to this because over there in the Mishnah it says, Im yesh nachri imoen nemonim loima lo nechnasno. Even if this Yiddish tax collector is coming to collect the tax, and there's a guy along with him, the Yid is believed to say, we never entered into the house. Aval eina monim loima, they're not believed to say, Nichnasnu aval eina gano, that we entered but we did not touch anything. Once they entered to the house, if there's a guy with them, we're concerned that they touched all kinds of things, and even to make things tameh. Now the Gemara explains, the fact that there's a guy with the Yid and that puts pressure on the Yid, what exactly is the problem? So the Gemara brings two opinions here. Rabbi Yechanan and Rabbi Elazar. Chad one says, Eimas Nachri Aleyan. The Yid is scared from this guy himself, that this guy himself may harm him if he doesn't do his work properly. Chad another opinion says, Eimas Malchus Aleyan. He's not afraid necessarily of the guy himself, but he's afraid of this guy that he may report him to the government, that he's not doing his job, his collection of the taxes properly. My benayu, what's the difference between these two opinions, whether he's afraid of the guy himself or he's afraid of the government? If the guy that's with him is not a prominent guy, he's not someone that he's afraid of the guy himself, that the guy is going to start telling him what to do and start harming him if he doesn't do his job well, so then he's not afraid of the guy himself, but he would only be afraid of this guy just be reporting him to the king, to the government, that he's not doing his job properly. The next thing it said in the Mishnah, V'cheina ganovim shechzirus hakelim. The ganovim that return their kelim, so they are trusted to say that they didn't make it tameh. But Amini, I'll ask you a chstire from that Mishnah that we just quoted. So over there as well, it says, Haganovim shenichzu teich habayis. Ganovim that entered into a house, einoi tameh elo mokim drises raglei ganovim. So where in the house would be tameh? In that area where they stepped, in that place where they went. The other area, you're not going to say that the entire house is tameh. Only the area where they went is tameh. But what do you see? In the area where they did go is tameh, and we don't trust them to say that we didn't touch everything. Rav Pinchas Mishmei de Raves. Rav Pinchas says in the name of Rave. In our Mishnah it's different. Kisha asu tshuva. In our Mishnah we're talking about ganovim that are doing tshuva. Ganovim that come into your house. So where they stepped, where they went, in the rooms that they went, things are tameh. But over here in our Mishnah he's doing tshuva. Deikenami diktani. Because what does it say in the Mishnah? Shech ziru esakelim. They have these ganovim that are returning what they stole. So what do you see? They're doing tshuva. Shma mina, that's the only time that you believe the ganovim. Otherwise, you don't believe them. Again?
They were matad the kalim.
No, they're believed to say that they never were matama them. But because they're doing tshuva, so you can believe them. Then it said in the Mishnah, Obi Yerushalayim, Ne'emanim ala Kodesh. In Yerushalayim, we believe the Amaratzim for Kodesh. Regarding what is this? So the Gemara says, this is a continuation to the previous Mishnah. Tana, so we learned in the Braise, Namanin al klicheres gasin lekodesh. What it's saying is, in the previous Mishnah, we spoke about the potters, that we suspend the gzeira of the Amaratzim and you can buy from the potters the kalim that you need, even from the city Moedim. Right? Well, what did the Gemara say before? That's only smaller kalim that is needed for this purpose, for kodesh, to store the wine or the oil in it. But in Yerushalayim itself, the suspension of this Gzeira regarding the Paras, the Amaratzim, goes even further. Even the big kelim, bigger barrels and so on, even that, we also suspend the Gzeira and we believe you can buy it from the Amaratzim. Now the Gemara explains, V'kol kach lama. What? So this question of V'kol kach lama is really a question b'chlal on this entire subject. Not only over here, B'negei to Yerushalayim, but even over what we said before, that they suspended the Gzeira regarding Mediyim. What's b'chlal, the reason for this whole entire thing? That they allowed to buy from the Amaratzim the Kalim, whether the smaller Kalim from the city of Mediyim or the bigger Kalim in the city of Yerushalayim itself. So the Gemara explains, because Sheinais and Kivshaina is Yerushalayim. Like I mentioned before, because in the city of Yerushalayim, you can't make these ovens, you can't make these kalim there. So there's a shortage for these kalim. They're being made outside Yerushalayim, and the Amaratzim were the ones that make them. So therefore they suspended the Gzeira. But Rashi explains what you see here, though, that there's a difference between the klicheres hadakin and klicheres hagasin, the smaller ones or the larger ones. Regarding the smaller ones, they suspended the Gzeira much more. You could buy it even from further out. But the klicheres hagasin, they didn't suspend the Gzeira as much, only in the city of Yerushalayim itself. What's the reason for the difference? So Rashi says, because the smaller klicheres, that's something that everybody needed. Anybody in Yerushalayim that wanted to bring the sachim, wine or carbon mincha, oil, needed these small klicheres to bring them. The klicheres hagasim that they needed, that was only in the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash over there, in the Lishka, that they used it for the karbanis tzibur, so they needed larger kalim to store what they were using for the karbanis. So because it's only what they needed in the Beis HaMikdash, and they needed much less of that, so they suspended the Gzeira only in Yerushalayim, not in Median. Okay, the next thing it said in the Mishnah was, B'shas HaRegel, Afal HaTrumah. During Yom Tov, we trust Amaratzim, not only for Kodesh, but even for Trumah as well. And now, immediately from where do we know this? Rabbi Shua ben Levi, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, there's a pasuk that says, Vayes av kol ish Yisrael le'ir, all the Yidden gathered to the city, ki yeshechot chavedim, and they all were united as one, like chavedim. Which means, HaKosav Asan Kulan Chavedim. When they gather all together, the pasuk here is saying that all Yidden, when they're together, are considered to be Chavedim. The term Chavedim is the term that we use regarding people that are careful with the inyanim of Tumah and Tara. So this pasuk is actually a pasuk, as Rashi brings, is by the story of Pelegesh Begiva, when all the Yidden gathered together to fight there. It's really, this pasuk is an asmachta. B'chlal, this whole entire thing, that Amaratzim are considered to be Tameh, is a Gzeira Midrabanan. So this pasuk is not a source for the Etzem Minyan, it's just an asmachta for this concept that in Yerushalayim, when all Yidden gather together, so the Amaratzim as well become like Chaverim. And therefore the Gzeira of Chazal is suspended over there in Yerushalayim, we believe them. And not only Yerushalayim, but it has to be in the time of Yom Tov, B'shas HaRegel. But what's actually the reason why we suspend the Gzeira during the time of Yidden Ayla Regel? So it's a Machlekes Rishayim. Rashi says the reason is, not Rashi over here, Rashi Masechta Beis says the reason is not to embarrass the Amaratzim. During the time when they're Eile Regel, we want the Amaratzim to be able to be together with everyone else on the same level. On the other hand, the Rambam says that the reason is not because not to embarrass them, but because at the time when Yidden come to be Eile Regel, all Yidden, including Amaratzim, are tevel. They're matayr themselves. They come to be Eile Regel. They know they want to go into the Azar and so on. So therefore, in that time period, even Amaratzim are careful. So therefore, they are tired. Even their Trumah is tired as well. Sagt the Heilige Mishneh, ha-paiseyach es chavitei. A person opens up his barrel to sell things on a Yom Tov. So we're talking about a person that's not an Amar. It's a person in Yerushalayim during the time when it's Yom Tov and people are Eile Regel. And a chaver, person that's careful with tum and tara, he opens up his barrel to sell to everybody, including to the Amaratzim that are there. Or va'amaschal b'isasa, he opens up, he's selling from his dough to people. Al gava regel, during the time of the Yom Tov. So now Rabbi Yehuda says, he can then continue selling this to everybody in the status that it's tied, even after the Yom Tov. And the point is, even though when he opened it up during Yom Tov, what happens? Everybody came to buy from the wine. Everybody came to buy from his dough. Even Amaratzim were touching this. So now during Yom Tov itself, there is no Gzeira of Tumah for Amaratzim. But when Yom Tov is over, so then the Gzeira of the Tumah applies back. But Rabbi Yehuda says, Yigmar, that even though the Amaratzim touched it, you could continue selling from what you began selling on Yom Tov even afterwards. If we're not going to allow this person to continue selling afterwards, he's not going to want to sell even on Yom Tov itself. He's going to say, I'm going to have a loss. Chachamim say that you can't continue selling from what you started from Yontif itself, what the Amaratzim touched during Yontif, because they touched it. So during Yontif, they suspended the Gzeira. But after Yontif, then you can't continue selling it. Afterwards, it's going to be Tomei. Okay, we pass like the Chachamim, and there's a question over here that the Rebbe discusses in the Sikhe on the Rambam's opinion that I mentioned before. That the explanation of why, when the Amaratzim come during Yom Tov, we don't make the Gzeira on the Amaratzim is because even the Amaratzim toivel themselves before the Yom Tov when they come to Yerushalayim. So if that's what we're relying on, so then what does it mean that after Yom Tov the Gzeira comes back? Why should it come back? Whatever the Amaratzim touched was totally toy. So the Rebbe explains that's not the Pshat in the Rambam. The Pshat in the Rambam is different. Rambam's lashon is hakoil metarem atzmon l'regel. Hakoil doesn't mean where we actually rely on every individual ama'aret to come and be metayed himself. Rather, what it means is, based on the pasuk that was brought before chaverim, that when Yidden come together to be oil regel, the individual, the status of every individual is not paid attention to. We look at all of Klal Yisrael as one mitzias of a tzibur, as chaverim, as one entity. And if all Yidden are all one entity, so in general, regarding all the Yidden that are present, then we say that they were toivel. Every individual Ama'aretz may have not been toivel properly, but we don't look at them as individuals when they come as chaverim to be Eile Regal. Right? Now that's what I mean that every day is also masber al pichsidis mitzvah, the essence of a Yid. Every Yid is pure. Comes after the Yom Tiv, so you go back to the regular halacha. Now you have to look at every Yid as an individual. The regular level of a Yid. And over there, as an individual, he's Tameh. And therefore, even retroactively, the things that he touched before, you go back to the regular halacha, and it's going to be Tameh. That's the opinion of the Chachamim here. Sagt the Gemara, Yosef Rabami Rav Yitzchak Nafche. Rav Yitzchak Nafche was sitting, Akila, the Rav Yitzchak Nafche, by the doorway of Rav Yitzchak Nafche. Pasach Chad V'Omar, one of them began and said, he asked the following question. According to the Chachamim, so we just said that the barrels of wine or the dough that he was selling, so after Yom Tov it's going to be Tameh, you can't sell it anymore. Question though is, could he keep this until the next Yom Tov? And then on the next Yom Tov, where the status of Tumah of the Amaratzim is again removed, so then maybe you can keep it until then and sell it then. Amalei Yidach. So the other one said to the one that asked the question, how could you say that you leave it until next Yom Tov? This is something that we know that everybody touched it, including Amaratzim. And you're saying that you should leave it until the next Yom Tov, but all the Amaratzim touched it, so we should consider it to be Tameh. Amalei, so he answered him back and said, well, during Yom Tov itself, we don't pay attention to the fact that everyone's touching it. Until now, during Yom Tov itself, everybody is touching it, and nevertheless, during Yom Tov, we suspend the Tumah of the Amaratzim. So maybe, even though Chachamim say that after Yom Tov, the Tumah comes back, but if you keep it until the next Yom Tov, maybe we go back to that suspension, and you can give it, you can use it, betari, you can sell it. Amalei, so he answered him, no, it's not the same thing. You can't compare the Yontif itself to what you're saying that you should be allowed to keep it till next Yontif. Till now, in other words, during the Yontif itself, Tumas Ama Aretz Beregel, the Tumah of an Ama Aretz during the Yontif itself, Rachmane Tara. The Torah said that it's Torah. This is, we had the pasuk before that it says that they're all called chaverim, even though it was only a asmachta. It's not, but the Gemara calls it rachmana Torah. We saw from that pasuk that they're all Torah. But Ella hashta tmeyehi. But now after the Yom Tiv, it already went back to the status of being tamei. So you're going to tell me that if they keep it until the next Yom Tiv, that it should be Torah again? It already went out from this Yom Tiv to become tamei. So it's not so logical to say that if you keep it to the next Yom Tiv, it should be Torah. Says the Gemara, shall we say that this question is actually a machlokes tanoi? The Tani Chad, in one brayse it says Yanichena l'regel acher, that this chaver that was selling from his barrel or from his dough, and now it's after Yom Tiv, and the Amaratzim all touched it, and Chachamim said, seemingly the pshat here is, the Chachamim said that after Yom Tiv you can't use it, so it says in the brayse, leave it until the next Yom Tiv. And V'tanya Yedach, in another brayse it says, Lo Yanichena l'regel acher. No, you cannot leave it until the next Yom Tiv. So my lav tanoi. Doesn't it seem very clear here that this question is these two braises? It's a machlokes tanoim. So the Gemara answers loy, not necessarily. This brayse says that you leave it until the next Yom Tiv. Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says that even after Yom Tiv, it's still tar, so therefore you can leave it until the next Yom Tiv. So it's not, but according to the Chachamim itself, that said that after Yom Tov it's Torah, you can't, Tomei that is, you can't leave it until the next Yom Tov. Frag the Gemara, Sorry, this is still part of the answer. And this that it says that you cannot leave it until the next Yom Tov Rabbana. That's the opinion of the Rabbana that say that after Yom Tov it's tummy. Fragt the Gemara, is this a good answer? Rabbi Yehuda says you don't even have to wait until the next Yom Tov. Rabbi Yehuda says even after Yom Tov, any time. Once you started selling this on Yom Tov, we allow you to continue selling it any time. So how could you say that the brayso that says that you leave it until the next Yom Tov, that's Rabbi Yehuda? Ella says the Gemara that we can say as follows. This brayso that it says that you don't leave it until next Yom Tov, Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda. This brayso that says that you do leave it to the next Yom Tov, Rabbana. That's Rabbana. The Gemara explains. According to this, when it says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that you don't leave it until the next Yom Tov, what does that mean? What Rabbi Yehuda is saying is that you can sell it any time, and there's no need to wait until the next Yom Tov. But according to the Rabbanon, you could leave it until the next Yom Tov. So according to this, it would come out that the brayso is actually saying, not like what the Gemara concluded before, that it's not logical to leave it until the next Yom Tov. Rabbanan is saying that you could leave it until the next Yom Tov and sell it then. When the Yom Tov is over. So then, because all the Amaratzim came into the Azara, during Yom Tov, they suspended the tomb of the Amaratzim, and the Amaratzim were in the Azara in the Beis HaMikdash. But now, once Yom Tov is over, so the tumah comes back. So what do? Ma'virin altaris Azara. They have to go through everything in the Azara and toivel it, and be mitayr everything that the Amaratzim touched. But if the last day of Yom Tov was Thursday, and now it's Friday, the day after Yom Tov, then Lahoyim Avirin, they did not do the Tara of everything in the Azara on Friday. Because of Kavod Shabbos, that the Kayanim, everyone is busy preparing for Shabbos, so they weren't matriach them to be mitayr on Friday, they waited until after Shabbos. Rabbi Yehuda says, Afloi b'yom hey. Even if the last day of Yom Tov was a Wednesday, and you only have Thursday and Friday, they also didn't have enough time to go and be mitayr all the kalim that became tummy during the Yom Tov, and she'ena kainim pnuyim, the kainim don't have enough time, and they delayed it until after Shabbos. So the Gemara Tana and Abraisu we learned, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, why, if they have Thursday, are they not available to be mitayr everything on Thursday? It's not Friday, it's not Erev Shabbos. So the Brayso says, because on Thursday, after Yom Tov, there's so much ashes there in the Beis HaMikdash from all the karbanos that the Yidden brought during Yom Tov. So Thursday, they're busy taking out all these ashes. So therefore, they don't have time to be mitayr the kalim that were in the Azara. And then on Friday, they're already busy preparing for Shabbos. So therefore, they have to wait until Sunday to take care of this. So how is it that they would be toivel? They would go and threw everything in the Azara to be mitayr. Matbilin as hakelim shoyib b'mikdash. They would take all the kalim that were there in the mikdash and they would be mitayvel everything because of the amaratzim that touched things. Now the Mishnah says, v'oimrim lahen. However, during Yom Tov itself, this is going back to Yom Tov itself, they would say to these amaratzim, and Rashi says that this is speaking about which amaratzim, the amaratzim that are kayanim. They would tell them, "Hizaru shalitigu b'shulchan." Be careful when you go inside the Beis HaMikdash. Do not touch the shulchan. Don't make it tameh. Right. So why are we talking only about kohanim amaratzim here? Because a Yisrael is not allowed to go inside the Beis HaMikdash itself. Right. But a kohen that's an amaretz that could go into the Beis HaMikdash, and Yontif, all kinds of kohanim came and did the aveda, but they told him, be careful not to touch the shulchan, because the shulchan is something that they're not going to be able to toivel, as the Gemara will explain. Now, all the kelim that there was in the Beis HaMikdash, yesh lem shniim, shlishim, they had a second and a third, shem nitmu arishainim, that if the first one became tameh, yaviu shniim tachteyim. So they should have a second to replace it if the first one becomes tameh. Some say that regarding the shulchan, they did not have a second one, because the shulchan they always wanted to keep in place. Okay? Sagt the Mishnah weiter, kol ha-kelim shoyim b'mikdash. All the kalim that were in the Beis HaMikdash, so after the Yom Tiv, to unen tefillah, they had to table it because the amaratzim that come and touch it. Chutz mimizbeach hazav umizbeach hanachayishes. Besides the gold mizbeach, which is inside the Beis HaMikdash, and the copper mizbeach, which is outside the Azara. Those two things, even if the amaratzim touch them, they do not become tameh. Why not? Because they're compared to the karka. Rashi brings, the pasuk calls it mizbeach adama, and the outside Mizbeach is compared to the inside Mizbeach, that is. The Mizbeach Hazav is compared to the outside Mizbeach. It's called Adama, and Adama, earth, the ground itself, is not Makabel Tumah. So therefore the Mizbeach is also not Makabel Tumah. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, that's Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. The Chachamim say, Mipnei she'em mitzupen. The reason is because they are plated. We'll see in the Gemara the explanation of they're plated. What kind of a reason is this? The Gemara brings two opinions, whether this is a reason that it should become Tameh, or maybe it's a reason why it's not Tameh. We'll see in the Gemara. Okay, let's learn one more piece over here, the first piece of this Gemara, and we'll leave the rest for tomorrow. So we learned in a brayset explaining regarding the shulchan. Why is it regarding the shulchan that they were careful that should not become tameh? So the brayset over here says that you have to be careful not only with the shulchan, but you have to be careful with the shulchan and the menorah. So the Gemara now explains. The Tana of our Mishnah, my time menorah. Why doesn't he say the menorah? So the answer is only the shulchan. There's a reason not to make it tamid, because shulchan ksiv beit tamid. By the shulchan, it says in the Torah tamid that it has to be there. The bread has to be on the shulchan constantly from Shabbos to Shabbos, every single minute of the day. So therefore, you don't want it to become tamid that they should have to go and toivel this shulchan. Then you'll have to take off the bread. It won't be there tamid. Menorah like ksiv beit tamid. By the menorah, it does not say tamid. So Rashi explains, even though it says in the Torah tamid by the menorah, but the tamid of the menorah means similar to the carbon tamid that has to be brought every day, once a day or twice a day. Same thing by the menorah, that is, has to be lit every evening, but it does not have to be constantly lit all day. Only by nighttime has to be lit. By day they can go on table it. The other opinion is because it says the menorah has to be there across of the shulchan. So therefore it's as if it says tamid regarding the menorah, even if it doesn't have to be lit all day, but it has to be there in the Beis HaMikdash across of the shulchan constantly. So therefore regarding the menorah itself, you have to be careful. It shouldn't become tameh, so they shouldn't have to remove it. The other opinion, which is our Mishnah, that's only coming to tell you the place of where the menorah is supposed to be. The menorah is supposed to be neichach hashulchan, but not necessarily does the tamid that it says regarding the shulchan apply to the menorah, that the menorah has to be there constantly. So therefore, only regarding the shulchan does it say in our Mishnah that you have to be careful not to touch it in order not to have to take away the shulchan from its place.